On Monday, the Department of Justice released new video from the deadly January 6th Capitol assault. The three new pieces of video are being used as evidence against Proud Boys member Charles Donohoe. The Proud Boys is a group known for its support of former President Donald Trump. Donohoe and several other members face charges related to coordinating with others before and after the attack. For more on this, I want to bring in CBS News reporter Cassidy McDonald. Hi there, Cassidy. So what do prosecutors say these new videos show, and why did it take so long for them to come out?
Well, these videos provide a rare look at the actions of a group of alleged Proud Boys who are at the center of one of the more high-profile conspiracy cases connected to the Capitol riot. The Proud Boys, as a reminder, they're a nationalist group. They're self-described Western chauvinists, and these videos came out after a group of media organizations banded together to request access to videos that were part of evidence in this case as well as in other cases. And so a judge released this footage yesterday, and in these videos we see a group, some of them alleged Proud Boys, gathered on the east side of the Capitol. One man in the group yells, "Let's take the effing Capitol." Another person admonishes him and says, "Let's not yell that." A second video shows two alleged Proud Boys, that's Charles Donohoe and Dominic Pizzola. They're carrying what appears to be a stolen police riot shield. That's a shield that Pizzola is alleged to have used to break open a window at the Capitol shortly after that. That's a window that prosecutors say multiple rioters used to enter the Capitol building that day. And a final video shows alleged Proud Boy Charles Donohoe towards the back of a large group of rioters as they charge violently against police. And Elaine, they eventually succeed at pushing past that line of police. Just another example of a group of rioters who simply overwhelmed law enforcement at the Capitol that day.
And Cassidy, what more can you tell us about the government's case against Charles Donohoe?
Well, these three videos were initially part of evidence in the case against Charles Donohoe, who prosecutors said is president of his local Proud Boys chapter. He's charged along with three other alleged Proud Boys in a conspiracy case. So the government is arguing that he had an instrumental role in planning and directing some of the actions at the Capitol that day. They accuse him of overwhelming police and pushing past police barricades and police lines, like in that video that we just saw. They also say that he used encrypted chats on January 6th to direct and communicate with other people and perhaps coordinate some of their actions as well.
Well, Cassidy, you know, it's really sobering to see this new video come out. Can we expect the release of additional video evidence from January 6th?
Yes, CBS News, along with this media coalition, is continuing to seek access to other videos in other Capitol riot cases, although they're going to be released on really a case-by-case basis. But the DOJ over the past week has already released video from a number of other cases, particularly in cases of assaults on officers. So, for example, we received some more video in the case of Patrick McCaughey. He is accused of being one of the people at the front of this mob that crushed against Daniel Hodges, Officer Daniel Hodges, in that now famous clip as Officer Hodges is pinned between doors and crying out in pain. We also received more video in the case of Scott Fairlamb, who the government said is a former MMA fighter. We got new video, new angles of an altercation where he punched a police officer, Elaine.
So what is the standing tally of people who have been charged and or pled guilty in connection with the January 6th riot?
More than 480 defendants so far have been arrested, and we've seen at least 5 of those defendants take steps to wrap up their cases by entering guilty pleas. So that includes one alleged oath keeper who was the first to plead guilty, and he also agreed to cooperate with prosecutors in that case and provide information. The other 4 defendants who have pleaded guilty so far, they were facing relatively less serious charges compared to the Oath Keeper and some of the other defendants in this case. So just today, a man named Brian Ivy, he pleaded guilty to one count of parading, demonstrating, or picketing in a Capitol building. That's the same charge that we saw a married couple, Jess and Josh Bussell, plead guilty to last week. And so for that charge, each of them face up to 6 months in prison. Paul Hodgkins is another person who pleaded guilty. He took a selfie in the Senate chamber. He pleaded guilty to obstruction of an official proceeding, and he likely faces, Elaine, over a year in prison.
Well, in our final minute that we have left here, Cassidy, do you have a sense how many more people may face more serious charges?
Well, we know already that 130 defendants at least have been charged with assaulting or impeding officers. Also, at least 35 defendants have been charged with conspiracy. And we reported last week that now up to 4 defendants have been charged with carrying firearms in connection with the Capitol riot. That's in addition to about 40 who have been charged with wielding other deadly or dangerous weapons on January 6th. And lastly, this is really important to remember, the FBI is still looking for about 250 people who are accused of assault on officers or other violent acts on the Capitol grounds that day. So as we hear about some of these early plea agreements and we think about what those charges are, it's important to also remember that there are many more serious cases that are still ongoing, and we'll be watching to see for how those cases wrap up as well.
A massive investigation. Cassidy McDonald for us. Cassidy, thank you very much.
Thank you.